Okay, so buckle up, people. Put your safety belts on. The roller coaster ride is about to begin, and I say roller coaster ride because there's going to be a lot of hand waving. All right. Questions?
Do we have to keep our arms and legs?
No, it's not. I didn't ask you if there's questions. I have questions for you. That's why it's
I'm so sorry.
It's all right. I don't know where they are though. They're somewhere in this bag or something. All right, well, I think I know what, while I'm looking for them, I'll know what some of them are. It's just disturbing. Hold on. Let it snow, let it snow, let it snow. Huh. Someone call 503-481-5748. 503-481-5748. Okay, everybody raise their hand, please. You too. Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. Okay, so keep it up if you've programmed in Perl. Keep it up if you've written a Perl module, I mean, of any sort. Keep it up if you publish that module to CPAN. Okay. How about who's written Perl 6? You can put it back up if you want, some Perl 6. Okay, who's written published anything to CPAN's Perl 6 CPAN modules? Not so many. How about who's written JavaScript? Lots of people. Who's written Node.js JavaScript? And who has published any Node modules to NPM? I'm keeping my hand up because I've done all these things. How about with Python? Who's written any Python? And who's published to PyPy? Whoa, okay. Maybe this is the wrong talk for you guys. Okay, I'm just kidding. Let's see, what's the, Ruby. Who's written Ruby? Cool, it's nice, isn't it? Who's released a Ruby gem? To rubygems.org. Okay, I've done that. Which one am I missing?
PHP.
What's it?
PHP count?
Oh yeah, no PHP. Anyway, so who has written the same, it's just gotta be me, so I'll raise my hand. Who has written the same module and released it to all 5 of those places? That's me. And who has written one source repository and pressed one enter key and released to all 5 at the same time? That's not me yet, but this is where it's going. So, I love modules, and by modules I mean packaged up modules that go to CPAN or Ruby gems or NPM or PyPy. I think of them as ideas in a box and gifts for my friends. And Acmeist, which you'll learn what that is if you don't already know, give more gifts. They give to many languages. And I was really happy, I said woot, because happy to find out that Perl 6 stuff is going on CPAN. That's really great. So what's in these packages or boxes? Well, it's really simple actually. There's code, tests, documentation, some meta information, and some automation stuff for installing it and for running the tests. And all of the languages, and more than those 5 that I'm talking about today, these are the ones I just happen to be concentrating on, have these things in the box in different forms, but that's the abstraction. So I'm going to do a quick vocabulary lesson, and I don't know if anybody saw that I wrote to Patrick, asked a question about Rakudo star, what should we call dists, because dist isn't a really good word. So as I looked over as I was actually going through the act of uploading to all these places, I had to kind of get my terminology right, and module actually became a bad word because Ruby uses module as a role or mix-in, and nobody uses dist. Only Ruby uses gem, so not very good. But both Node and Python use package, and I think it's a really good thing, a really good word, and I'm trying to get Perl 6 to adopt them. Packages are what you put on CPAN. Maybe we'll have to change the acronym. The actual files, the code files, the .pm files, that you load I call libraries. And I'm going to use that terminology throughout this talk. So packages and libraries. A library contains classes. And I haven't really settled on module. I just happen to list that there because that's some people, in Ruby, a module is what some people call a role. Some other languages call a mixin. But package and library I'm pretty set on. And class is a no-brainer. Only Perl calls it a package, and only Perl 5 kind of. I mean, we call it classes too. We've grown up. So, so let's look at like the layout of a Perl 5 package. You have your lib tree, that's where you keep your code. You also sometimes have a bin, which you put your binary scripts that get into your path. You put your tests under T. You actually put your documentation, which isn't on here, under lib as well. We kind of mix in our documentation into our code. And metadata comes from various places, but ends up in a meta.yaml or JSON file. We have make.file.pl or just.ini is our automation gateway. And then we also have changes file, and we also have these files, but they can largely be generated. They're not really things that we have to maintain too often. And it'd be cool if changes, I bet Dacilla probably generates changes files. So I'm just starting to use Dacilla, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. I love it. So here's a Perl 6 package, which I learned about yesterday in what's the Panda guy's name? What's the guy who did the Panda talk? I just can't remember his name. Anyway, he gave a Panda talk, and here's what they look like. Pretty much the same, except for a bootstrap.pl, a meta.info, which I think is going to change to a meta6.json, he was saying. And this ext, I really like this idea. This is where submodules go, and this is going to be a very important part of Acmeist packaging. For Node.js, kind of the same. They put the docs in the doc library, and not everybody does this. I mean, actually, Perl has the best standards of all of these languages. The others just kind of copy off of each other, and standards kind of emerge, but they're not really standards. In Node these days, most people don't write Node. NPM is a huge success. It's growing to the size of CPAN. I don't know where the numbers are exactly, but I heard that some people said they had surpassed CPAN. I kind of find that hard to believe. But there is a lot of stuff is going in, and a lot of it is written in CoffeeScript or some variant of CoffeeScript, not actually in JavaScript, which is really cool. So when you write something in CoffeeScript, you put the coffee files under source. They generate into the lib, so the JavaScript gets generated from coffee. The same, and then test owner tests. They have a package.json, which I liked, and they have a cake file, which I didn't really like. So cake is just coffee. It's like a rake file, or all these people reinvent make, including Ruby. So Ruby's only difference here is that it puts its stuff in a .gemspec file. That's where the meta information goes. Pretty much the same. Rake file does all the automation. Python is the weirdest of all of them. They don't have a lib. They just put their top-level namespace right in the directory. It's really, Python is kind of I'm in a, you know how you love hate things. I'm in a hate phase with Python right now. I mean, they got the indentation-based scoping for programming, that kind of thing. That's great. And then they got a million things wrong. I mean, just everything just grinds against you. Try putting a Unicode character into a module and see how many tools it breaks trying to get to PyPy, which is its home where it lives. I have to spell my name DOT instead of D-O-umlaut-T. I won't even try it anymore. And setup.pys they're handwritten, and that's kind of where the meta information lives as well. Anyway, I don't care, because I want to generate all of those things that you just saw from one set of really nice sources where information is laid about nicely. And this is what an Acmeist package layout would look like. You have a lib thing, no source directory, and that's where your cafe script or uniscript or cdent, which you'll learn about in a second, live. Bin is normal. Test is pretty normal, except for since Acmeist tests use something called TestML, and those tests are largely generated from, because you write test once and they run in all of the implementations. And they also, all of the generated implementations pass the exact same tests. And this makefile gets generated for you, but it basically, I use plain old makefile because at the developer's side, I can generate rake files and cake files and whatever people have settled on, and even this makefile gets generated. So the ext thing, which I borrowed from Perl 6, is where the submodules go, because when you define a TestML repo, you should put it in a separate repo because, I mean, right now I'm actually porting the same packages from language to language and using TestML to test them both. So, so I keep the TestML for a given project called foo and foo.tml repo if I have a foo project, and then I have my foo Ruby project, my foo Python project, my foo Perl project, foo Perl 6 project, but I can use a submodule, and now I have a standard place to put them under ext. Everything's lowercase, I've decided. I mean, there's no real reason to use uppercase anymore for things, except for the makefile, because GNU make doesn't work without that. But you know, modern shells all put stuff in. You can't even get stuff to float to the top anymore. It's just, for better or for worse, that's how it is. So why not lowercase everything? Don't shout it. Thanks for just rolling with all this stuff. I mean, I'm sure you probably disagree with lots of it. Okay. So, in the Acmeist box, we already know that we have code tests, doc, information, and automation. These are the actual projects that back those up that I've been working on. So CDent is the programming language, and we'll learn more about it. And then syntaxes for CDent are Uniscript and CafeScript. Tests are TestML, which I just was talking about. Doc is stardoc, and Quim is a certain format. Package is a tool that does all the packaging. So most of everything, like, you should only have to write the minimum of what you need for all of this stuff, and then like the makefile, you would have a package.yaml file, and the makefile would just get generated for you, even though that makefile can do some pretty cool stuff. And the one other project that's actually the biggest project that I work on almost daily these days is Pegex, which is a parser generator that works in every language. So you create a grammar once, and now you have a new DSL like TestML, which is written in Pegex, and Pegex, which is itself written in Pegex. They work in all the languages where Pegex works. So there's a couple of projects on the net that I've been using in the last couple of years that have really, I've had these Acmeist ideas for about 6 years now, and it's a really slow road to building this up. And how many people have been to an Acmeist talk before? Okay, so a lot of new faces, that's good. Thank you for coming again. It doesn't proceed nearly as quickly as I would like it to, but maybe you can join in and help me. So, so what I learned from Distzilla, or what Distzilla proved, is that you have a coding environment and then you have to form to the standard. And working in that standard environment is kind of klutzy. You have to have a lot of duplication and stuff like that. You have to put your code or your documentation in certain ways. And why not just do it the way you want it, but when you hit a button, have it make it the way CPAN wants it, right? That's what Distzilla does, and that's what this Acmeist tool set is doing as well, but for all languages. So it's like Distzilla for everyone. And RJBS is motherfucking brilliant. He, every good idea that I've ever had, he's actually already implemented. So, and I will now say that my goal in the future is that all my Perl code, all my Python code is going to be generated from my favorite code, whatever that is. And so I'm no longer going to support these silly things that I've been pimping for the last 10 years in Perl, which are module install and module package. They had good things at the time, but it's time for them to die. So long live Distzilla, long live Acmeism. Okay. The other thing is CoffeeScript, and that's just proving, I mean, that's everybody's, who's used CoffeeScript actually? I'll show a little bit of it, but it's just basically a way better syntax for JavaScript, and it adds features from Perl, from Python, from Scheme, I think, from a lot of Ruby. Yep, and it's way better than any language that I've worked in, except for LiveScript, which is a fork of that that makes it even better. So people are, CoffeeScript went really far, and people are, polishing it even more, including old Perl hackers like Audrey Tang. It's working on LiveScripts. So let's back up a second. I really haven't introduced Acmeism or what it is. How many people have heard the word Acmeism before? Okay. So Acmeism is my word that I came up with when I realized some time ago that almost every project that I was serious about involved all of the O'Reilly languages, as I like to call them. There was nothing that was really specific to Perl, even though I did most of my work in Perl. So Acmeists are about sharing good ideas across language borders. Now, I'm going to go over to this web page right here. Okay, I read this, and it's actually, I think it's nice. Acmeism is the idea that creators of good ideas take them past formidable boundaries of their mother tongue. In programming, this means that a great idea published as a Ruby gem will, perhaps with a dash or two of added abstraction, serve the Node and Python communities equally well. Ingy, who helped create YAML, the serialization language format for all languages, has published packages in most of the O'Reilly languages and is working on a tool chain that I'm talking about right now, so that he can hack once, push everywhere, hope. This talk is about those tools and some of the first fruit packages. Okay. I thought that was well written. You like go to write a talk, and then you look up a page and you're like, wow, I can't say it any better than that. I didn't even remember saying that. Okay. So it's the idea that language separates culture. If you think about it, the difference between us and cultures who speak different mother tongues are not really that much different in our day-to-day lives, and our great ideas can sometimes get stopped at cultural borders when they don't really need to, except nobody takes the effort to get them over the language barrier. Perl 5 and Perl 6, we have two languages in our community, and we're working at different ways of bringing them together, but, and I guess we're not really two different cultures, we're one culture, which is great. For a while, well, we kind of separated like a cell trying to split, but then it came back together. And, but I think Perl 5 and Perl 6 could use a little Acmeism. So, I'm going to give a lightning talk about the Rosetta Code Data Project, but it's, who's heard of Rosetta Code or used that? It's basically 500 languages and 700 tasks and a wiki implementing each of them and different stuff. But they also have these talk pages because it's a media wiki, and reading those talk pages is really cool because you're reading about these like programmers from, from the 60s on talking about cool concepts. And anyway. Some people think Acmeism is just polyglot, people who program in multiple languages, but that's not what it is at all. A polyglot simply speaks multiple languages, and most of you are polyglots. I mean, most people do Perl and JavaScript, probably in this room. So, an Acmeist is an inventor, an author, or a craftsman, the people who I think create packages and that kind of thing, in programming anyway, and they're not satisfied in just giving to their own community. They're going to do what it takes, which is a lot of hard work to get them to other communities. And I think that Acmeists are a very rare breed. I don't suspect that I'm going to make many Acmeists out of. I've only made like 3.25 Acmeists over the last 5 years, so it's really hard. And but the hard part is, it builds upon itself. So once you get the bootstrapping of this kind of stuff, it'll get easier and people can join in, and you're like, oh yeah, I could write this for Perl, or I could write it for 20 languages. Well, I'll talk about that later. And something when I was in Taiwan, made me think of Acmeism as because it's kind of an ism, so it kind of sounds like a religion. This is probably your timeline. Part of this is your timeline, depending on where you are as a hacker. But you learn a language, you write some code, you get a programming job. Maybe you write an open source framework, give a Yahtzee talk, start your own religion. That's the standard timeline, right? So. So I came across this project called docopt. I was writing a command in some language, a command line tool, and it needed get opt options. And who's heard of docopt? Anybody? That's because it's not available in Perl. But let me show you this. I read about it, and it's a great program. Basically, we have 1 million of these in Perl, but basically you just write the documentation for what your usage is going to be for the options, and it parses everything perfectly for you. So people type in their options, and then if it fails, they print that message. But so it basically generates your get ops for you from stuff, and I'm sure Damien has done lots of stuff like that, and other people have as well. But the cool thing about this project is it was originally written in Python, and then people have Acmeist-wise ported it to all these languages except for Perl. So I would like to, with this tool chain, I can write a Pegex grammar for docopt and TestML test for it and publish to 25 languages as soon as I support 25 languages. So Acmeism happens a little bit. I'm going to introduce a new language to you called JSONy. Has anybody heard of JSONy, or JSONy as we call it? Is that you, Tommy? I can't see so good. Right. It's JSON without any syntax, or we have a couple curlies and that's it. It really is the same as this. And actually, it's a superset of JSON. So any JSON is actually JSONy, but you can leave out almost all of the syntax, and it still means the exact same thing. So, and it's on CPAN now and on Ruby Gems now. That's how I got into Ruby actually in December. Bob Tifish, Tom from London, he wanted it it was MST's idea actually, and but he wanted it in Ruby, so then I had to learn Ruby, and I thought it would take a week, and it took 3 months, but I love Ruby now. I've given a talk in Ruby at the Seattle Ruby Brigade about all this stuff. So, and here's a little rant. In all of these things like CoffeeScript, LiveScript, punctuation is kind of going, it's just kind of how can we leave off punctuation and still get the same thing? YAML has done that for years, right? You don't have to quote hardly anything. So some people just seem to be tied to semicolons. I think that all of these things, we all know what curly braces mean and what parens mean and what commas mean and what semicolons mean. They should always be supported in new languages, but they should almost always be optional and omitted. That's my rant. So where did JSONy come from? Well, I don't even like the language, and I made it because MST, he's like, I have this idea for this thing I want to make. It's like a JSON, but you don't have to type in any symbols. And I'm like, all right, let's define it. What do you want it to do? What do you want it to look like? And he gave me some ideas. We wrote up some tests, and I wrote a grammar for it in Pegex, which I'll show you in a second. And we made it and implemented it in 1 day, and it was on CPAN. So the tool set has been fruitful already. And we also released it in 25 languages, same code, same tests, same API, and then I woke up. But that's where I want to go. That's the world I want to live in. All right, so let me show you the old Pegex. So who's heard of PEG, the term PEG? It means parser expression grammars, and if you read the documentation of SO5 for Perl 6, which is Perl 6 rules, it describes Perl 6 rules as a PEG. A PEG is basically rect descent parsing grammars, but they're being used all over the place now. It's a very popular parsing technique. There's no prelexing, and I won't go too much into it. But basically, when I looked at Perl 6 and I saw Perl 6 rules, I'm like, oh, this is great. I mean, besides, Perl 6 is really slow, and it still has all those semicolons in it, but this Perl 6 rules needs to be everywhere. So I'm like, what can I do? I'm like, well, every language has regexes except for Perl 6, of course, you know. So I'm like, I'll make something very much like Perl 6 rules that works everywhere regexes do. And so I'm like, oh, peg, regex, pegex. So let's take a look at a Pegex grammar. So this is the Pegex grammar for Pegex itself. And maybe we should actually look at the Pegex grammar for JSOny, since I just showed you that. So it's very simple. A JSOny is a sequence, a map, or in JSON it's just a sequence or a map, but there's a couple of other types of sequencer maps for JSOny. A node is a map, sequencer, scalar, just like in JSON. And so look at these. I actually stole this from Perl 6. You can put the leading pipe in just so you can line up your pipes in front and switch things around. That's the alternation. So this means sequence or map or top sequence or thing. So every rule in here has to have a rule definition. We keep going down. Unlike Perl 6 rules, you have to account for white space, but I got this from Pegleg recently. They use a minus, which is really nice. The capital things are actually from another grammar that's built into Pegex called atoms, and instead of actually typing in the, I mean, it looks a little weird that I have to put L curly instead of just a curly brace there, but it actually makes my intent very clear. And I'm writing this once for 25 languages, so my gosh, I should be clear. A pair is a string, followed by maybe a colon with some white space around it, followed by a node. So we have a string and a node, that's a pair. And a mapping is a beginning curly, any number of pairs, and a closing curly. But then there's also, anyway, you go through that. Now here's something that's actually quite complicated. This is anything between slashes actually becomes a real Perl regex or a real Ruby regex or a real Python regex. And you'll see that in a second. This is syntax sugar for generating. I compile what you're seeing right here to this, which is just a simple data structure that you could dump in JSON or YAML. I've dumped it in YAML here. And that's the whole definition for the language. This is the parser uses this to parse any JSOny. Okay. You can check out Pegex. I won't go too much more into the syntax unless there's any specific questions or observations. Actually, let's see if there's a. I'll show you one operator. It's the %%. Percent, and actually Perl 6 rules took this back from Pegex, because I work with those guys a lot. And Perl 6 rules defined %, which means the thing on the left separated any number of those, which is the star here, separated by the thing on the right. So this is nodes separated by commas, and the commas may or may not be there, because in JSON you really don't care about commas so much. But the %% means the trailing comma is also allowed. So I was kind of proud to have committed to Perl 6 in that way. Okay. Now, let me copy this line. I hope that actually works. This is frickin' cool. I'm going to go back into that directory where this is the Pegex grammar for Pegex itself. And it's not too large. Actually, the bottom section was an error handling section that was committed to me by somebody else, but it's pretty small. Let me run this command and see if it works. Okay, so let's look at this command. What it's doing is reading in the Pegex grammar and creating a compiler out of it that it's going to use to parse the Pegex grammar. So it's very self-meta recursive. It should make your head explode. Now the cool thing is that, and I think I have this cached up here, yeah. So I can also parse it with, you'll notice there was no code rules in the grammar, right? It was just defining what things were. You put your code rules in an action class or receiver class, and the cool thing is you can use different action or receiver classes. Since I don't allow code in the grammar itself, you're free to repurpose the grammar for different things. So in the first run here, we see that it's an array of hashes. We put the names of the things, which is good for debugging, but when you actually go to generate the AST, all you really care about is the data values. One interesting thing about Pegex is the regexes, any captures, are what actually pull data out of the stream that you're parsing. And I won't go, there's great tutorials on Pegex for how to use it any further. But let me show you one more. So this is so I use two receiver classes. I have Pegex tree and Pegex tree wrap, which puts the rule name in front of each match. There's also one called I'm going to have to type it in. Live demos, yes. So I'm going to load this. This one's cool because that receiver class actually did something interesting with the data. It made the final version. So this is, if you were to cat out the Pegex YAML file, it would be the exact same thing. That's what's actually happening under the hood. That's the actual thing for the Pegex compiler for parsing. The parser passes all of its matches to that receiver, which creates that data structure that we were looking at earlier. So if your head hasn't exploded, I don't know what I'm going to do. So, okay, so the Pegex challenge for me, here's what I want to do. I want to make HTML making web pages and pretty things, put it into the hands of everyone, right? I want to put parsers and grammars into the hands of everyone. And actually what I'm doing is looking at all kinds of other grammar and parser projects and just taking the best ideas from them. I want to make things simple as possible, run in any language that you happen to be comfortable with, make it faster than any other technology, which, talking to Agent ZH yesterday after his sregex talk, I have ideas for that. Way better error reporting. CoffeeScript is miserable for error reporting. I mean, that's its big failure probably. And then I want to make all these things easily subclassable. So JSOny should just be a subclass of JSON. There's a JSON grammar. You're like, oh, let me tweak it a little, add X, maybe I want to allow commas at the end of things, even though they're strictly not added. That would be easy for somebody to do. Okay, so let me show you the JSOny TestML. TestML is my test language, and it actually, well, let me just show it to you. Okay, here's a TestML program for testing JSOny. And you can really easily see what's happening here. I have some description, and I have some JSOny and some JSON, and I'm probably going to see if they match. Now, this is the actual TestML code. It's saying, it's a sequence of method calls. The things with stars in it say, look down in the data section below, find everything that has a JSOny thing, and also every block that has a JSON section. So you could have other kinds of data down in there that didn't get processed by the statement, put an implicit loop around that, and then take the JSOny string, pass it to JSOny decode, which lives in what we call a bridge class, which the module author has to write, because that's the bridge to its actual application. Dump it to YAML, and then do the same thing, pass it through a JSON decode, and make sure the two equal. And so if I were to actually go over to JSOny.pm, well, it looks like I've already run the test, but I can run that same test, and that's what it looks like, same as ever. So the nice thing about TestML in Perl is you can mix it in with regular Perl tests or regular language tests. It doesn't take over your testing environment, but it does provide a way to code tests that will run on everything. Now, actually, those 2 lines of TestML make it look like it's just a trivial little language, but you can actually define functions, closures. It has namespace scoping. It's a full language. I actually put it on Rosetta Code as a language. It was the 500th language on rosettacode.org. I think there's 501 now. I'm not sure what the next one was. So, okay. Who's heard of TOML? TOML was Preston Werner. Tom Preston Werner is this he's come up with a lot of things. He's a pretty popular blogger and Ruby guy, and inventor. I'm trying to think of what's the biggest thing he came up with. Can't remember. Anyway, he's like, I hate, if you read the webpage, it's pretty funny. It's like, YAML makes me want to tear my hair out, or just looking at the spec, it makes me, I don't know. I can't really, I should read it. But anyway, so he came up with this spec overnight of what he thought would be the best config file. So format, so he wouldn't have to use JSON or YAML. And it's basically like an Ingy with less quotes, less syntax. And but what was cool is all these people, it says something about if you don't understand it, you need more whiskey. That was the funny part. He got all these people to make implementations of TOML overnight because he's a popular guy. And so it was somewhat Acmeist, but I think that all these languages suck because you write a specification and then you make the implementations and they're all different. And they all have their own set of bugs, different docs, different APIs, and you really haven't created a standard anything. So the whole spec and go implement everywhere model is pretty failed. Acmeism solves that by creating one code base with one set of tests, one API. That maybe it's not the best API, but you have that same functionality across languages. And even with any language, you're not going to have perfect APIs from every module contribution. So anyway, these are the parts that make up a package. You have like a JSOny. You have a repo for the TestML suite. You have a repo for the grammar, and then you have a repo for Ruby, Perl, Python, Node, etc. What I'm going to do is, what I'm working on now is tying them all into an Acme repo, which actually uses the others as submodules and pulls things in as needed. And so, and I know we're wrapping down here, but this is kind of the cool thing. So I made this Acme thing with a little bit of hand waving. It's pretty much what I talked about earlier. We have the changelog, all lowercase. We have the package.yaml file. All these files have real content in it because it was this was really a LiveScript node project that I was working on, and I just renamed LiveScript Cafe Script so I could and fake stuff out. But it has the make file that I want to do, and look what I can do. I can say make npm, which is the node thing. Okay, so what I just did was, well, if I say find npm, now I have an npm directory which I could upload to npm, and it has all these things. It has these tests, but I could also feel like something has gone wrong. I can say make test from here, and I could say make Perl, I could say make Perl 6. It knows about the languages that I want to go to and has all the support to do this. Now this is going to fail the test because I'm not actually done writing the code, but I think if we go to the top of this, it actually passed one of the tests. So that actually CD'd into the NPM and ran make test in there, or ran whatever the testing facility was for Python or Node or whatever. In this case, it ran Cafe script, and it looks like I failed 14 tests and passed one. So I'm in the middle of development, but that's a real thing. When I'm done, I say make release, and all the languages get built and released in one command. So I'm going to quit there. It's, I put way more into the talk than I knew I could talk about, but I'd like to take some questions while we got a little time. So we got a minute or two for questions. Anything? Well, if there's no questions, then I'll... Okay, so here's what happened. Yeah.
How is JSOny different from YAML? Why was YAML not?
Oh, it's way different. So, all right, so I'll give you one example. Matt wanted anything that was unquoted, each word became an array. So like if I say, I love Lucy, those three, just that string, it would be an array of I, love, and Lucy. Whereas in YAML, that would be one string. So that's one difference. It's not anywhere near the same. But I took a few ideas from YAML and made it JSON superset. This is what happens when you take all of the punctuation out of JavaScript. And this is actual live script. This actually works. You don't need commas if you already have an array here and you have literals in there, right? Why would you need those? You don't need semicolons on any of this stuff. You don't need curly braces. And you even have curly braces on the hash definition, but it can figure that out. You have a colon there. That's good enough, right? So that's where people are going. This would probably make Larry cringe, because maybe linguistically it just irks him the wrong way, but a lot of people like this. And you should be able to put in all those things if you want, or leave them out. So that's the way a lot of things happen to just kind of be going right now. I'm not sure if it's, maybe linguistically it will break down for even me, but yeah.
Does the live script still return C at the end of it?
Does the
live script version return C?
No, it returns JavaScript. So.
No, I'm sorry. In the JavaScript version, you got return C, but I don't know if that's implied.
Oh yeah, that is implied. Sorry. Anything. The last statement executed, which would be this one or this one, is returned in CoffeeScript or LiveScript. That's right. So.
Did you just drop off the C equals?
Yeah, I just put it in there. I think I needed the C equals to get the curly-less hash definition that I wanted to show off there. So it's a little contrived.
So you could leave out the C for code for other.
Yes. Yeah.
I guess.
Yep. Yeah, and actually, if you go to livescript.net or coffeescript.org, both of those have facilities for actually typing code. Since they go to JavaScript, the compiler is running inside the browser, and you can actually type in both or cut and paste stuff in, and it'll show you in real time the result. Yeah.
It's almost like we're backing our way into Lisp.
Yeah.
No parens.
Well, but the white space is a paren.
Easier to type.
Nothing wrong with Lisp,
Nothing wrong with Lisp.
except those parens.
These white spaces did.
There you go. Okay, so Audrey said to me once that Haskell makes writing parsers and compilers easy as Perl makes writing CGI programs, which must die. Ingy says Acmeism makes writing multi-language DSLs as easy as Haskell makes parsers and compilers. I have these IRC channels, which are, pound whatever you heard about today on freenode.net. Stop by and help out if you want. I mean, TestML is real in Perl, Pegex is real in Perl, and the other stuff is being bootstrapped up. Any other questions? Yeah.
I like the decoupling of the action of the parsing from the grammar itself.
Yes.
Anything else to say about that? Or?
Oh, the decoupling of the code from the grammar?
Right.
Rainy, sorry, he doesn't like it, but
Sorry?
That's the Perl 6 report.
Yeah.
It's not. It's separating
So
the
many of
grammar.
the parsers I've written that get messy because.
well, Perl 6 allows code in the grammar. I currently don't allow it, and I'm a little bit on the fence about what to do, but once you open it up, people will start piling it in and not getting, there are benefits to leaving it out in that I can actually put multiple receivers, like if I have, and so if people write grammars and I want to do something different with them, I can just put a different action class on that, no problem, because I know for sure that, they haven't gunked it up with their own code. But Pegex is actually evolving pretty quickly, so there might be some, also the code that you would put in there would have to be Acmeist code. So you'd have to come up with some language, you couldn't just put Perl in the grammar. That wouldn't really be serving Pegex at all. So I'd probably have to come up with some Lispy syntax to that did the right thing. Yeah. So yeah, most people, you don't see that very much in the, even in Peg. I was looking at Pegleg, which is a fantastic little thing that actually Riney uses one called Greg, which is a fork of Peg and Leg. Yeah.
Is there a repo of the grammars for Pegex right now? Or
Yeah, if you go to github/ingy.net, which is INGY.dotnet, I have about 400 repos, 300 or 400. But if you search for PGX, I actually suffix all of my, as an Acmeist, I have to suffix all my repos, because if even for like JSOny, I might have, 7 repos, or for like the TestML project, I have all these different repos for Perl and Python and TestML and Pegex. So I suffix them with PGX. And so you can get every Pegex thing I've done by searching PGX.
And that's just the grammars?
That's just the grammars, yes. Yeah, I like to keep the grammars in their own repo so they can be reused for other things. Yes?
Do you have general guidelines that you've thought about when you're thinking about a project, when to write it in a language-specific thing, or whether to abstract it out into like a more Acmeist?
A long time ago, I started only thinking in abstractions, and I can't really, don't hire me. I don't really bang out code. I can't even do like a little task that I've been asked to do without turning it into some huge abstraction. But that's the way I think, yeah. Anything else? All right, well, if you want to bug me at lunchtime, feel free. Thank you.